Told Mr. Knitting Cult Lady, I'm off to read to the internet. It's hard work, but somebody's got to do it. I think my live even worked on YouTube. So there we have it. All right. Culting of America has a birthday, which is January 20th, 2026. It was 1 year till inauguration. But then Mr. Knitting Cult Lady was like, but why isn't it January 6th? And now that's all I can think about. So, anyways, in January, it's going to come out. And we decided today we're probably going to do some kind of journal or workbook with it that people can work on the cultiness in their life if they want to. Okay. Hasn't been as long since we worked on chapter 9, but it's back with edits. And I'm just doing this read through, and then we have to buckle down to editing whole chapters. And then, hopefully it comes out at some point. Chapter 9, high entrance and exit costs. It costs what to end my membership? For Karen, a lonely stay-at-home mom, the idea of being a #boss babe and running her own business felt like a lifeline. She'd been stuck in a fog of diapers, bottles, and total exhaustion, feeling invisible in her own life. Then suddenly there it was, a community of CEOs who promised support, success, and a sisterhood of women all taking charge of their futures. Weekly Zoom calls, hyped up Facebook groups, and a flood of feel-good messaging made her feel seen and inspired for the first time in months. She wasn't just a mom anymore. She was an entrepreneur. It wasn't just about selling clothes. It was about buying into purpose, independence, and the dream of financial freedom. So when she was told the upfront investment was a small price to pay to start her empire, it felt worth it. For Becky, the hook was different. She was stuck in a corporate job that drained her. No room to grow, no control over her schedule, and definitely no recognition for her hard work. The pitch was exactly what she was waiting to hear. Be your own boss, work from anywhere, build a business on your terms. It felt like a way out of the glass ceiling she'd been banging her head against for years. She invested what she was told was a small risk to unlock unlimited potential and dove in headfirst. But pretty soon the cracks started showing. Sales were inconsistent, the pressure to recruit more people turned into a constant hustle, and no matter how hard she worked, the numbers just didn't add up. Ding, ding, ding. Someone over there got it. Multi-level marketing, MLM, ventures often entail costs and challenges beyond the initial investment. New MLM recruits are usually hit with the same pitch right away. Start with your friends and family. Sell to them, recruit them, get them to buy in. But what they don't mention is how awkward and sometimes devastating that can be. Pushing overpriced products on the people closest to you can strain relationships fast. One Reddit user summed it up bluntly. Joining an MLM destroyed my extended family. And the financial pressure doesn't stop there. MLMs love to host flashy conferences, summits, and retreats, events that promise the attendees the secrets to success. But those secrets don't come cheap. Between flights, hotels, and registration fees, these trips can drain your bank account fast. The Federal Trade Commission, FTC, warns that MLMs often require recruits to buy training materials, marketing kits, and attend expensive seminars, all adding up to significant financial strain. Amway was one of the OGs for sure. The result is a predictably toxic mix of money problems, social isolation, and emotional exhaustion. Many people find themselves too deep to walk away, convinced that if they just try a little harder, they'll finally make it. But the reality is bleak. The FTC also reports that most MLM participants make little to no money. Many even lose money. And when the dream crumbles, they're left not just broke, but burned out and disillusioned, wondering how they ever got roped in to begin with. I'm also going to put the book out in Spanish and probably Portuguese. For women like Karen and Becky, the realization often hits like a slow-moving train. The system isn't designed for them to succeed. By the time they start asking questions, they are already deep in debt, holding boxes of unsold inventory they can't afford to keep but can't bring themselves to toss. The supportive sisterhood that once felt so warm turns icy when they stop towing the line. Leaving doesn't just mean financial loss, it means losing the social circle they've come to rely on. Take LuLaRoe, for instance, where more than 100 sellers filed for bankruptcy by 2019, with nearly half reporting an average of over $4,100 in unsold merchandise. By the time the dream crumbled, it was already too late. And the hustle that was supposed to set them free had turned into a nightmare. The emotional impact on consultants was significant. Many felt that the system was not designed for their success, leading to feelings of betrayal and regret. The documentary Lula Rich explores these themes, providing firsthand accounts of former consultants who describe their experiences of financial and emotional distress. Cult experts call MLMs commercial cults, and it's not hard to see why. The math just doesn't math. These companies sell a dream, financial freedom, being your own boss, living life on your own terms. The reality? One study found that nearly 99% of people in MLMs lose money once you factor in the endless products, fees, and promotional materials consultants are pressured to buy. The system isn't about selling products. It's about recruiting more consultants to work under you, hence the pyramid in pyramid scheme. The real money flows straight to the handful of folks at the top, while everyone else is stuck at the bottom of the pyramid, hustling just to break even. And my theory is that Mormonism is also one of the OG MLMs, which is also why there are so many MLMs in Utah. And that's also why it's the quintessential American religion. Ta-da! MLMs like LuLaRoe, Herbalife, doTERRA, Airbon, and countless supplements and wellness products rely on classic cult tactics to keep people hooked. And of course, we will have MLM Lady in the musical. They love bomb new recruits with praise and promises of success. They push an us versus them mentality where anyone who questions the system is jealous, negative, or just not willing to hustle hard enough. And when doubts creep in, the companies roll out the same thought-stopping cliches. You're building your dream, or success is just around the corner. It's emotional manipulation dressed up in a sparkly motivational package. MLMs aren't entrepreneurship. They're a trap. Just like any cult, they use deceptive recruiting to sell empowerment while exploiting the people who buy in, keeping them working tirelessly so the leaders at the top can keep cashing in. It's all smoke and mirrors, and in the end, the house always wins. Sunk cost fallacy and the real price of entrance costs. I should be wearing my "you're free to leave anytime" earrings. I got these tiny little handcuff charms that say freedom, and I hung earrings on them. I'm making lots of earrings right now. I'm in my earring era. Mentioned MLMs without business professor mentioned MLMs without warning people what they are. I don't like it. Sunk cost fallacy and the real price of entrance costs. Some groups demand financial investment for entry, but the real cost often runs much deeper. The more you put in, the harder it becomes to walk away, because leaving means losing everything you've already invested. Economists call this the sunk cost fallacy. Our tendency to keep investing in something that no longer serves us simply because we've already poured time, money, or effort into it. We fear wasting our past investments, even if staying causes greater harm. And even though you all realize how brilliant it is of me to read my book in progress to you, you probably didn't realize that I'm also practicing for the audiobook. Sunk costs are defined as costs that cannot be recovered, and yet we're wired with a cognitive bias that tells us to stick with it, blinding us to the potential future benefits of abandoning it. It's a big reason why people stay in bad relationships, dead-end jobs, and yes, cults. Admitting you were wrong, that you spent years or even decades chasing a lie, feels unbearable. History shows this clearly. When a cult predicts the end of the world and nothing happens, most believers don't pack up and leave. They double down. The cognitive dissonance is too intense. So they decide they weren't wrong. The timeline was just off. It's not going to be martial law anymore. It's going to be drone warfare. Like abused spouses defending their abusers, cult members will make excuses for their leaders or rationalize failure as a test of faith. That's how cults keep people hooked, even after the spectacular collapse. People love to talk about exit costs, but rarely about entrance costs. Everything you have to pay, literally or figuratively, to fully commit. Sometimes it's just money, the membership fee, the inventory you're forced to buy, the pricey conferences and retreats sold as investments in your future. But more often, it's deeper. The time you pour in, the relationships and opportunities you give up, the way you reshape your beliefs and identity to match the group's world. One of the reasons that both cults and the U.S. Army love to remind you that you're free to leave anytime is because it's a subtle reinforcement of what the barriers to entry were. What it cost you to be there and what you invested in time, money, labor, or other sacrifices to get that far. Are you really going to throw it all away because you don't like one of the newest revelations or regulations? In cults, these entrance costs can be extreme. You might drain your savings, cut ties with your family, quit your job, or move across the country to prove you're all in. The price of belonging isn't just measured in dollars. It's measured in how much of yourself you're willing to surrender. And the more you sacrifice, the harder it becomes to question the group. Because to leave means facing everything you've already lost. As Mark Twain is reported to have said, it's easier to con a man than to convince him that he has been conned. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciate me reading to the internet. I told Mr. Name Cult Lady, I said, I have to read to the internet. Somebody's got to do it. It's hard work, but okay, we're going to try to get this done before 3:45. Joining the Children of God in the 1970s wasn't as simple as just showing up. Once the love bombing wore you down and you were ready to forsake all and follow Jesus, you were expected to hand over everything. Your savings, possessions, even clothes on your back. My thoughts on proxy war in Africa is they've been talking about that for a really long time. I know, because I was perfectly prepared for Africa to become the next conflict center of the world because I speak Spanish, Portuguese, and English. And all they had to do was send me to learn French. And every country in Africa, because of colonialism, other than Ethiopia and Eritrea, speak one of those languages. But instead, they sent me to Afghanistan a bunch of times, and Africa didn't actually become the conflict center of the 10 to 20, whatever that's being called. Okay, wasn't as easy. You had to hand over everything. Hey! Shh, Republican dog. If you owned a home or land, like my grandmother's family, or earned passive income, like Jeremy Spencer of Fleetwood Mac, who joined in 1971 and still gives the group his royalties, you were told to sign it over. If you had a job, like my grandfather, you were expected to quit and live on the compound full-time, essentially becoming a beggar for God. The cult claimed it was straight out of the Bible. The new Christians had gathered all their things and laid them down at the apostles' feet, and distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. But in practice, it meant you had no fallback if you wanted to leave. Once you were in, you were all in. No safety net, no backup plan, just total dependence on the cult. There are plenty of entrance costs outside the cult world. They're just called barriers to entry instead. Same idea, different language. You see them everywhere. The degree required for your dream job, licensing fees to start a business, the hefty buy-in to join an exclusive club. According to Matt Siebold of the Center for Mark Twain Studies website. Mark Twain never actually said that. Somebody said it. Costs are framed as proof of commitment or qualifications, but also they trap you. After all the time, money, and effort, leaving can feel like a failure. An academic I spoke with who asked to remain anonymous because, well, they're still in academia, described entrance and exit costs perfectly. The parallels to my own experience as both a 15-year-old ejected by a cult and a former Army captain trying to fit into the workforce were uncanny. Academia's entrance costs, the price of admission, the lost wages while pursuing a PhD and or doing a postdoc, delaying life events to accommodate that degree or preparation for a faculty position, loss of sleep because there's not a single hour you are awake when you couldn't theoretically be working, thinking, reading, planning, even if you're not on campus. Relocating your home at least once, if not several times, over however many years of postdocing, often in different countries, and your transferable / generalizable skills from working on incredibly niche projects. Exit costs, loss of your social circle, your home, especially if you live on campus, your ideals of the pursuit of knowledge as a noble career, years of your life spent specializing to a career with low upward mobility prospects, the feeling of not ever having a real job, so feeling unqualified for the workforce, your economic or social status symbols, especially if you didn't finish the degree, which can be tied to your self-esteem, reconciling your utopian ideals to the workforce, having to relearn how to talk, interact / make friends with non-academics outside of the relatively easy framework of academia, feeling directionless once your purpose is removed. Sometimes entrance costs are just plain cash. MLMs require big upfront investments for inventory you might never sell. Professional organizations charge outrageous membership fees, selling the illusion of career advancement. Churches solicit tithes and love offerings as proof of devotion. It all feels like investing in your future, but once the money's gone, it's hard to admit it might not pay off. Who wants to admit that they wasted all that money for nothing? Then there are large group awareness trainings, LGATs, or executive success seminars, where personal growth gets slapped with luxury pricing. These programs charge thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, for multi-day intensives promising personal transformation. Nexium charged $7,500 for a single session. Landmark Forum, Tony Robbins, and others are masters of the upsell. Advanced courses, one-on-one coaching, endless upgrades to unlock your full potential. It's a spiral. People drain their savings, convinced they're building a better future, while the promised breakthroughs never quite arrive. Meanwhile, high-pressure tactics keep them hooked. And then there's college. Even getting in costs money. AP exams, test prep books, tutors, application fees, transcript fees, travel for campus visits, clothes for interviews. It adds up fast. Consultants to boost your application, thousands more. By the time you're admitted, many families have already spent more they can afford, while many others don't have the resources to even compete. And graduate school, medical, law, and MBA students face punishing schedules, endless classes, clinical internships. Hobbies vanish, social lives disappear, relationships suffer. Even basic self-care takes a backseat. According to the American Medical Association, approximately half of U.S. medical students report experiencing burnout, making them more susceptible to depression compared to their non-medical peers. And when someone dares to ask for better conditions, they're told, "You knew what you signed up for," as if that excuses everything. It's the same in competitive sports and music. Elite leagues, travel tournaments, private lessons, equipment, audition fees. The costs are staggering. If your kid shows promise, the price only climbs. Advanced coaches, elite programs, maybe even moving across the country. The truth is that talent without financial privilege doesn't get you very far. And again, the sunk cost fallacy kicks in. After years of lessons, training, and sacrifice, quitting feels impossible. In sports, this might mean tolerating abuse or dangerous regimens. In the arts, it can mean accepting toxic mentors or industry exploitation because that's how it works. The more you've invested, the harder it is to admit something is broken. But entrance costs aren't always obvious. And a lot of times they're far more hidden than just handing over a wad of cash. Take the military. On paper, it looks like a straight shot to stability, education, and purpose. But the hidden entrance costs are steep. There's the unpaid prep, studying for the ASVAB, the Department of Defense version of standardized testing, which is, of course, racist and sexist. Training for fitness tests, all while juggling real life. Then there's the emotional toll of leaving your home, friends, family, and everything familiar. The mental adjustment is massive. You enter a world where your personal freedom takes a backseat to strict rules, rigid hierarchies, and a culture that demands total conformity. Most recruits have no clue about the long-term costs, injuries that don't heal, deployment trauma that sticks with you, or the uphill battle of figuring out civilian life after you get out. The military's pitch sounds like an opportunity, but those entrance costs are way more than just signing your name on the dotted line. There's a reason we call it signing away your life. Some people like to push back when I draw comparisons between the military and cults. Their favorite argument is always, at least in the military, you know what you're signing up for. But in both cases, you don't truly know what you're in for until much later. Whether it's a drill sergeant or a cult leader, the strategy is the same. Love bomb you with promises of purpose, belonging, and transformation. Then reality hits. As one sergeant barked at me, I don't care what your recruiter told you. I own you now. Margaret Singer, not Margaret Sanger, said it best. You do not usually learn the full story and real purpose of the cult until long after becoming embedded in the group. Cult veteran or army vet, most of us would agree, the life you're living 6 months later rarely matches the one you signed up for. Time is another entrance cost that often goes unnoticed, especially when it comes to our work. Late nights showing initiative, unpaid weekends, endless meetings. It's baked into nonprofit culture, for the greater good, corporate culture, be a team player, and government jobs, endless red tape. The expectation to be always available seeps in quietly, but it steals your life just the same. The constant Slack dings on our phones, the habit of checking work emails at night. Especially in the post-pandemic world where so many people work at home, the boundary between work and personal life has become even blurrier. Whether it's work, school, the military, or a creative pursuit, our commitments often require us to let go of certain things in order to focus on what we value most. Maybe we skip a party to study for a test or pinch pennies to attend that writer's conference. The key word here is choose. Sacrifice in itself isn't a bad thing. It can even be empowering when it's in service of something we genuinely want and care about, and when it doesn't come at the cost of our well-being. But things start to get murky when those sacrifices no longer feel like choices, but obligations, driven by fear instead of passion. That's when you risk not just giving things up, but giving yourself up. The red flags often show up in the people and passions we cut out of our lives to achieve cult-like isolation. At first, it's subtle, skipping a few family events, avoiding friends who don't get it. But then it grows. You start to avoid negative influences, and suddenly anyone who questions the mission is suspect. Favorite books, music, even hobbies get pushed aside. Before long, your world starts shrinking. Friends outside the group stop reaching out because you're always busy. Family interactions become tense, or you start avoiding them altogether. The job you once loved, not compatible with your new purpose. College, just a distraction. Every tether to your old life starts to feel like something holding you back from your real calling. And by the time you realize how much you've given up, you're already in too deep, surrounded only by people who reinforce the idea that leaving isn't just a bad choice, it's impossible. Oh, chapter 21. That's a hard one. That's a day memorialized. Which brings us full circle to exit costs, because maybe the big and most hidden cost of all is having to go back to the people you left behind and say, I was wrong. I have 2 podcasts. I have one podcast called Cults and the Culting of America, which is like this channel, but with guests. And the other one is called Hey White Women, which is me and White Woman Whisperer deconstructing white supremacy like the cult that it is. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, you can email admin@uncultureyourself.com on the cults podcast. We're not doing guests on the other one yet. Exit costs. For Karen, leaving the MLM was like ripping off a Band-Aid, only to find the wounds still raw and painful underneath. She had dumped thousands of dollars of inventory. Oh, we need a better heading name than exit costs. So I think of that she couldn't move. And walking away meant giving up the business opportunity she'd convinced herself would change her life. But the financial hit wasn't the worst part. It was the social fallout. The women she'd called her sisters, the one who cheered her on during calls and bombarded her with motivational quotes, stopped responding to her texts, unfriended her, and cut her off completely. She wasn't just leaving a company, she was losing a whole community. The hardest part was the guilt. She had internalized so much of the MLM's messaging that even as she walked away, she felt like a failure. Like her inability to succeed was a reflection of her worth, instead of realizing the system itself was set up for her to fail. For Becky, the exit was quieter, but still painful. After realizing she was spending more on conferences and products than she was making, she stopped attending the weekly team calls and posting sales pitches on Instagram. Her upline didn't confront her directly, but the silence was deafening. The woman who had once bombarded her with emojis and encouraging messages when she hit a personal best suddenly went radio silent. Becky also had to face the reality of lost time. She had spent so many nights messaging strangers, attending virtual pep rallies, and pushing herself to meet quotas that she'd neglected her real friends and family. Rebuilding those relationships felt overwhelming, especially since so many people had written her off as that MLM girl. Walking away wasn't just about leaving a job. It meant facing the shame of all she'd sacrificed to stay in the game for so long. Crystal, for your cult to academic pipeline, like 100%, if I hadn't joined the army, I would have had a PhD by the age of 25. Like was the pipeline I was in. We can hope both our women find themselves in new, uncertain reality, lonelier and poorer perhaps, but finally free. In every listicle telling you how to stay away from cults, you'll find a reference to exit costs. And very rarely does that mean only money. Although we know cults are always after that too. Leaving a cult or an MLM isn't just about packing a bag and walking out the door. It's about everything you lose in the process. The term exit cost captures all the ways leaving a high control group can wreck a person's life, socially, financially, and psychologically. Exit costs are the inevitable weight pressing down on every decision to leave, keeping people stuck even when they know they should run. Social exit costs. Social ostracism is a nearly inevitable cost of leaving a high control group. Members who walk away often find themselves completely cut off from their support systems, including family and friends who remain loyal to the group. The emotional toll is staggering, especially when the group has worked so hard to make you believe it's your only real family. For members of tight-knit groups, whether it's a religious cult, a family-oriented workplace, or a sorority or fraternity, leaving is framed as betrayal. For those who have spent years or their entire lives investing in these communities, the idea of starting over can feel paralyzing. High control groups exploit that fear. They warn that life outside the group is bleak, dangerous, or doomed to failure. When I was excommunicated from the cult at 15, it felt like losing everything in one brutal instant. One day I had a family, a home, and a role in the world, even if it was oppressive. And the next, I was nothing. There was no preparation. Suddenly, I was out in the world I'd been taught to fear, with no money, no education, and barely any family to rely on. Though one incredible older sister took me in. Excommunication wasn't just being kicked out of the group. It was like being erased from existence. This kind of social cost is deliberate. Many groups enforce strict shunning practices to ensure that leaving feels like the end of life as you know it. The Children of God wasn't unique in this. It's a hallmark of high control groups. Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, use disfellowshipping to isolate former members. Parents won't speak to their own children. Siblings become strangers, and lifelong friends will cross the street to avoid you. In 2024, the Norwegian Supreme Court even revoked the JW's religious tax-exempt status, primarily because of this practice. Many American churches employ similar tactics, often under the guise of church discipline. Evangelical, Baptist, and other conservative communities frequently excommunicate members who question doctrine, challenge leadership, or have lifestyles deemed sinful. Friends and families cut ties. Pastors sometimes publicly name and shame people from the pulpit. Former members are treated as though they've betrayed both God and their loved ones. A notable example is Mars Hill Church, an evangelical megachurch founded in Seattle in 1996. Under the leadership of Mark Driscoll, members who voiced concerns about leadership or doctrine were unlabeled, unrepentant, and dangerous, or were labeled unrepentant and dangerous, exiled from the community, and publicly shamed. After a 2014 investigation into the alleged abuse, Driscoll resigned and the church dissolved its several campuses across 4 states. Keep drinking water when you make an audiobook, otherwise your voice gets all dry. All right, 15 more minutes. We're not going to make it. Even when the groups don't explicitly demand shunning, the result is often the same. Former members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints report feeling a subtle but unmistakable chill. They may not be excommunicated, but they're suddenly outsiders. Sudden chill. And not just because of their newly uncovered shoulders. Come on! Yeah! They may not be excommunicated, but they're suddenly outsiders. Friends stop calling, family interactions grow stiff, and invitations disappear. Some are even labeled apostates, a word with heavy with meaning inside the church. One that signals someone who has not just left, but betrayed the faith. The exclusion isn't always loud or dramatic. It's the way relationships fade, the way glances are exchanged, the way a once tightly knit community starts to feel like a world they can't go back to. See, there you go. I have my little call outs to my Mormon sibs from another crib. And shunning isn't just a religious practice. Former members of Alcoholics Anonymous, for example, often report being distanced or quietly judged by people who once supported them, regardless of whether they remain sober. Some are told they're in denial or headed for relapse. My co-writer, Amy Reed, spent many years in AA and remembers this dynamic well. When someone decided AA wasn't for them, it was as if the relationship just quietly ended. Nothing was explicitly said, but everyone seemed to understand that person was no longer part of the group. Phrases like "they went back out" or "they're doing more research" carried a heavy implication. These were code words that framed former members as unstable, uncertain, or unsafe, slippery people to be avoided, as if doubt itself were contagious. Maintaining sobriety, it seemed, required maintaining distance. In this way, shunning functioned as a silent safeguard. If someone stopped showing up to meetings, they simply disappeared. And for those who left, the shame of being cast out, the fear of being seen as a failure, could make it difficult to return or seek support elsewhere. The result is often a painful cycle of guilt, isolation, and disconnection. Or you could just do it on spite like me. I was like 15. It's like 10,000 people are hoping that I'm going to fail. Can't fucking fail. When I left the Army at 28, the response was shockingly similar to what I experienced when I was excommunicated at 15. Though the military says everyone transitions eventually, my departure was met with resistance. I was abruptly pulled from my position, isolated from colleagues, and given a lower evaluation. People spoke of my future in ominous tones, not realizing I'd already rebuilt my life once before. Critics often insist the military can't be a cult because you're free to leave anytime. But as I wrote in Uncultured, second rule of cults... Wait, I didn't write this in Uncultured. Anyway, second rule of cults is that the cult will forgive any sin except for the sin of leaving. That rule applies even in the most gilded institutions, including one that calls themselves the family as well. We saw it play out in real time when Harry and Meghan stepped back from the British royal family. They were instantly cut off, financially, socially, and emotionally. The media turned on them. Their security detail was revoked, and the family went silent. Meanwhile, Prince Andrew, accused of sexual abuse of minors, retained his residence and family ties. The message? Any sin is forgivable, except leaving. Beyond personal relationships, leaving a high control group means giving up the shared sense of purpose and identity the group provided. Whether it's the Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, or the Children of God, life inside is highly organized and full of meaning. When you leave, you're not just losing people, you're losing your framework for existing. For many, the emptiness left behind is overwhelming. It's not just about the people you love disappearing. It's about feeling like you no longer belong anywhere. Those losses aren't incidental, they're strategic. The more a group controls your relationship and purpose, the harder it is to leave. One of the most defining aspects of being human is how deeply social we are. We rely on our communities not just for connection, but for safety, identity, and survival. That's why social shunning cuts so deep. It doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes. Rejection can feel like a kind of death. Most of us carry memories of this. Being iced out of a childhood friend group for speaking up, for being different, for not fitting in. For many, that pain only deepens with age. Being rejected by family or faith communities for being gay, for questioning a belief, for refusing to conform. The fear of exile is so powerful that people often choose silence over truth, compliance over authenticity. It's easier to stay in a toxic church, social circle, or political tribe than risk rocking the boat and being thrown overboard. Hate, after all, is its own kind of cult. And as we learned in the chapter about us versus them thinking, hate can build powerful community. A cruel, conditional kind, but community nonetheless. And in America, it often looks a lot like home. Once you see how steep the social costs of leaving can be, the ones that technically don't cost anything, it becomes easier to understand the weight of financial exit cost. Because often leaving the group you were told you were free to leave anytime comes with a bill. And sometimes that bill is steep. Financial exit costs. Oh, we got like 7 more minutes. Leaving a cult can trigger unexpected financial penalties, like forfeiting communal assets, savings, or property tied to the group. And suddenly, leaving feels not just daunting, but financially catastrophic. The financial traps are often invisible to outsiders. But for members, fear of losing everything they've built or having to start over from scratch is overwhelming. That's what makes financial exit costs such a powerful tool for control. They don't just drain your wallet, they drain your hope. And when hope disappears, so does the will to leave. In the Children of God, like so many communal cults, members gave up everything when they joined, believing the noble idea that everything belongs to the family. But that also meant walking away with nothing if you left. You might leave the commune with your freedom, but not a penny to your name, which to many people might not feel like freedom at all. The fear of leaving can become paralyzing when you realize you'll be stepping into the world with absolutely no resources. And it's not just about assets. High control groups often make their members reliant on them for basic needs: food, housing, and even employment. In the Children of God, you lived and worked in the commune. There was no outside job to fall back on if you left. In other extreme religious groups like the FLDS, the Polygamous Mormons, and 12 tribes, members work for church-owned businesses, meaning their entire livelihood is tied to the institution. It's not far from corporate setups where employees live in company housing and are locked into free meal plans. Think oil rigs and remote fracking operations, cruise ships, amusement parks, agriculture and meatpacking labor camps, boarding schools, tech companies with on-site campuses. People are often likely to put up with more abuse than they would otherwise in trade for a place to live and all their needs being taken care of. If you want to climb the spiritual ladder in Scientology, you better bring your checkbook. Nothing in this religion comes cheap. Not enlightenment, not self-improvement, and definitely not freedom. Auditing the church's signature form of spiritual counseling can cost up to $800 per hour, and members are encouraged, some might say pressured, to buy in bulk. Think of it like therapy, except instead of working through childhood trauma, you're trying to rid yourself of invisible alien soul parasites. And instead of insurance covering the sessions, you're on the hook for a bill that rivals a small mortgage. Introductory courses may be only $35, but they don't count toward the mandatory advanced courses, each costing hundreds more. Before long, many Scientologists find themselves thousands of dollars deep, some even mortgaging their homes and taking on massive debt just to stay in. And then there's the freeloader debt, a retroactive bill for discounted or free services you received while working for the church. In 2008, one family reportedly paid $147,183 in freeloader debt to cover training and services received by their 2 children while they were serving in the Sea Org. It's the spiritual equivalent of quitting a job and getting a retroactive invoice for your training. NXIVM, disguised as a self-help group, charged members up to $7,500 for personal development workshops that offered little more than financial entrapment. As members moved deeper into the organization, expectations to contribute increased. There was no diploma at the end, just a stronger grip on your wallet and your mind, and a collection of colored sashes to show your movement up the ranks. And if you were in DOS, NXIVM's secret society for women, a permanent scar of the leader's initials on your pelvis. Financial entrapment is one of the most insidious tools these groups use. Debt isn't a side effect, it's a tactic. When someone has poured tens of thousands of dollars into their spiritual journey or self-improvement, walking away doesn't just mean losing faith. It means facing financial ruin. The fear of losing everything from social connections to your life savings keeps many people locked in place, unable to take the exit even when they desperately want to. And yet, every one of these organizations insists you're free to leave. The military uses a similar playbook. Leaving service means walking away from a guaranteed paycheck, housing allowance, healthcare, and a whole ecosystem of benefits. Even minor losses, access to the commissary or the gym, add up. Transitioning soldiers quickly realize that the stability they had is now replaced with financial uncertainty. And for some, the fear of falling through the cracks is enough to keep them in longer than they'd planned. Then there's the "you're halfway there" trap. Retirement benefits kick in after 20 years. So after a decade of service and sacrifice, deployments, missed family milestones, physical wear and tear, the idea of walking away feels like throwing away all of that effort. Leadership reinforces this mindset, often framing leaving as a waste of everything you work for. My husband would tell you that the last 4 years of his 20-year career felt longer than the previous 16 put together. The golden handcuffs of pension and healthcare benefits loom large, turning sunk costs into shackles. I kept telling him, you can't have senioritis on your freshman year. You're going to have to get through this. What do you think? It says, your world was too mainstream, so I made my own. But it was still too mainstream, so I cut off the sleeves, and now I'm putting fuzzy sleeves on. 2 more minutes. Silicon Valley's handcuffs are wrapped in sleek packaging. Stock options, bonuses, and equity makes staying seem worth it. But those options usually come with a 4-year vesting schedule and a 1-year cliff. Quit before year 1, you get nothing. After that, shares vest slowly, keeping you chasing a payout that might never come. Meanwhile, long hours and toxic leadership wear you down. Performance bonuses and raises tied to tenure subtly nudge you to stay past your breaking point. For leadership roles, non-compete agreements ensure that leaving isn't just inconvenient, it's professionally crippling. Many of these agreements bar employees from working for competitors for months, sometimes years, leaving them trapped in limbo where they can't take their experience anywhere else without a legal battle. Okay. Medicine has its own brutal costs. The average med school debt as of 2023 was over $200,000, a burden taken on with the assumption of stable, high-paying future. But physicians are burning out at record rates, often feeling like cogs in a broken machine. Leaving medicine can mean a major salary drop, plus the loss of benefits like malpractice insurance, continuing education stipends, and conference support. Even when the job becomes unbearable, the financial structure is built to keep doctors in place. Divorce, too, comes with staggering financial costs. Ending a marriage isn't just about splitting up. It's about untangling a life that's been legally and socially fused. And that process can be brutally expensive. Lawyers alone can cost a fortune, as much as a down payment on a house if things get ugly. Dividing assets, retirement accounts, businesses, and homes often involves penalties, forced sales, and long-term losses. Women, especially those who have taken on the caregiving roles, see significant income drops post-divorce, an average of 41% according to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, while men's household income fell by only 23%. Add in relocation, paying a mortgage or rent on a single income, restarting a career, rebuilding a life from scratch, and hopefully therapy for you and the kids if you can afford it. And it's clear why many stay in marriages they'd rather leave. Underlying all of this is the concept of sunk costs. When you've poured years of your life and all of your savings into something, the idea of leaving can feel like throwing all of that away and admitting it was all for nothing. That logic doesn't just keep people in cults. It keeps them in soul-crushing jobs, toxic relationships, MLM schemes, and broken systems. You convince yourself it's better to stick it out than admit you made a bad investment. The lie is the glue that holds these institutions together. Okay, then I will be back tomorrow to read about psychological exit costs and then recovering and rebuilding after leaving. A little bit of, what that's like. And that'll be that. And then we'll start editing like crazy on Monday. Book comes out in January. Bye.